Hello, ladies and gentlemen, coming at you live from Richard Dawkins' house. Unfortunately, Richard Dawkins won't be with us today. He's off doing some sort of science crap or something. Instead, we are joined by the Armoured Skeptic.
Thank you. Dawkins has a really nice place. I'm touching all his things. What I like to do is debunk videos, so without further ado, let's start off with the debunk video.
Hey boss, can I take this?
Whatever.
Have you ever heard this? Billions of years ago, there was an explosion in space.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's the worst description of the Big Bang Theory I've ever heard in my life.
Or 100,000 years ago, this happened, or that happened.
Yeah, where are you going with this?
Or even, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
I have a bit of a problem with that one.
Question, how does anyone know?
Oh, I know this one. Scientific study.
I mean, was anybody there to observe it?
Oh, God, no.
Well, actually somebody was, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
You know, for eyewitness testimony to work, you have to prove that the witness exists.
Check this out. First of all, we need to recognize that there is a huge difference between observational science and historical science.
Yeah, one exists and one was made up by answers in Genesis.
Let's define the two real quick, shall we? Observational science is simply when we observe something and experiment to draw conclusions. It involves repeatable experimentation and observations in the present. It's through observational science that we find cures for diseases and build space shuttles, stuff like that.
Okay.
Through historical science, we consider things that happened in the past, but they cannot be checked in the same way.
Well, maybe not always, but sometimes they can be. Idiot.
I mean, we don't have access to the past like we do the present because, well, it's gone, right?
No. The past is very much still available to us today. We just have to know where to look.
All we really have is speculation, or at best, circumstantial evidences of past events based on what we see in the present.
Oh, okay, so like a fossil record showing millions of generations worth of evolution is circumstantial. And watching stars being born and dying in space, that's circumstantial. Watching the universe expand at a rate much faster than the speed of light, that's circumstantial.
That's not to say that we can't make intelligent guesses about the past, or form reasonable inferences from rocks or fossils in the present, but we certainly cannot directly test our conclusions because we cannot repeat the past.
Okay, I get what you're saying here. There's a difference between the kind of science that we can observe and test right here and now in the present, say in a laboratory, and the kind of science that requires us to make theories and inferences on things that may have happened. You are absolutely correct. However, that does not necessarily mean that every type of science that studies the past necessarily fits only the second description of science that you used. Lots of different studies of the past can fit in the first description, including geology, for example.
Got it?
No, because evolution can be studied in a laboratory too. We observe DNA changing all the time.
So, does that mean historical science is unimportant? Not at all. Let's drop an example down here for a minute and take a look at the Eiffel Tower. You know, that 19th century Parisian monument designed by Gustave Eiffel that stands 1,063 feet tall, which was built as the entrance for the 1889 World's Fair? Yeah, that one. Well, guess what? Everything I just told you is true, but how do we test it?
Okay, you're talking about literal human history. This isn't the kind of science that we were talking about before.
Well, applying observational science, we can, of course, observe the Eiffel Tower anytime we're in Paris. It's here in the present. Then, we can continue by testing the height and comparing it to all the other structures in Paris and confirm the claim that it is indeed the tallest building in Paris. But that's the extent of the kind of facts that can be proved by observational science in reference to this claim.
Not quite. We can carbon date the steel of the structure, assuming that not too much of it was replaced over the years through maintenance. We can look at other structures from the same time period and compare building techniques and architectural styles. And we could also do an archaeological dig of the site to see if we can find any time period specific tools or items around the structure that would suggest what time it was built.
How do we really know that Gustave designed it? How do we really know it was built in the 19th century as an entrance to the 1889 World's Fair? How do we really know how many people visited? That's all in the past.
Yes, but because that is literal human history, we can just look at historical records, right? Is that what you're going to say?
It can't be repeated. For that kind of information, we need to go outside the limits of observational science and discover what has been communicated to us through historical documents and eyewitness accounts. And furthermore, we have to believe those eyewitnesses and documents are trustworthy.
Right, okay. So that is clearly something that we couldn't find out for sure if we were to, say, discover the Eiffel Tower for the first time today and try to figure out how it was built. But what we could figure out is that it was Parisian, that it was built in the early 19th century, and that it has no clear purpose. And you might say, oh, that doesn't tell us who designed it. And you're right, it doesn't give us all the answers, but science has never claimed to give us all the answers. Science will never be able to tell us who exactly designed every building that ever existed. But it can certainly give us a lot more answers than you are suggesting.
The same is true when we talk about the origin of the Earth. The Earth is here. We all agree with that. So, does observational science confirm that the world was created by God?
No.
And are there trustworthy documents and eyewitness accounts that confirm it?
No.
Well, let's take the last part first. In short, what we're really asking is my original question: was anybody there to observe it? The answer is yes. God was there, and he told us how he created.
Great, so just produce some historical records that prove that this God character of yours exists, and then we'll take his testimony at face value.
He inspired people to write down his very words.
That's not the same thing as a historical record. God's story about how he created the world does not fit with what we observe in observational science.
That became books that were compiled into a complete book called the Bible.
Cool.
Which has been verified over and over again.
No, it has not.
And has demonstrated itself to be totally trustworthy in all it claims and teaches.
When?
Even secular scholars will concede that the Bible accurately records historical events.
Some historical events. Most of the things that the Bible describes have not even been proven to happen at all.
We have the most trustworthy revelation from the most trustworthy eyewitness.
Unfortunately, science can't take the eyewitness testimony of somebody that hasn't even been proven to exist.
Now, what about observational science? Does it confirm the Bible?
Oh yeah, it does. Yup. That's a Bible, all right.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No!
And what's extremely important to realize is the observable fact that the universe is logical and orderly.
Whoa, what? What does that prove?
That makes sense only if its creator is logical and has imposed order on his creation.
No, where are you getting this from?
It doesn't make sense at all if the universe is just an accident of a huge explosion.
Accident? No, science does not suggest that it's an accident. And stop describing the Big Bang as an explosion.
Our minds are able to comprehend many things about the universe, and that's only possible if the creator of the mind gave us the ability and desire to explore the universe.
What?
It doesn't make sense if our brains are byproducts of chance because we couldn't trust their conclusions to ever be accurate.
What the f***? Where are you getting this from? Our brains are the byproduct of evolution. The way evolution works is the brains that are best survive and reproduce. It's not a dice roll every single time.
It only makes sense that we can observe and repeat an experiment if the universe consistently obeys the same laws from day to day, which only makes sense if a lawgiver created it that way and upholds it.
You mean it only makes sense to you? Science observes that the laws of the universe remain consistent, and what that tells us is that the laws of the universe are consistent. It doesn't tell us anything else.
So to be bluntly honest, science itself, whether observational or historical, is only possible because God exists and the Bible is true.
Why? Because you say so? You say the universe is logical like you know what that means, but then you go ahead and give a premise without giving any proof that that premise is true. That's like a huge sin in logic.
I could go on.
Oh, okay.
But enough said.
Not even nearly enough was said here. First of all, comparing the written history of the human race with the history of the universe is really erroneous. They're completely different forms of study. I would also like to point out that if historical records clash with what we observe, we consider those historical records false. Sometimes history lies, and science is able to tell the difference between a lie and the truth. Thanks to a generous matching gift grant from Mr. Louis Appignani, all donations given to the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science by December 31st, 2015 will be matched up to $250,000 1-to-1. To make your personal donation to the Richard Dawkins Foundation, please follow the annotation on the screen or click the link in the description. If you donate today, your money will have double the impact. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw and you'd like to see more Armored Skeptic, please follow the link in the description or click on the annotation on the screen.